Welcome to Mapping the College Audition, a podcast where we explore the landscape of the college theater world and try to demystify this daunting audition process. I'm your host, Charlie Murphy, director of MTCA, Musical Theater College Auditions, and today we have a near and dear to my heart show lined up for you. Ryan Quinn is one of my best friends in the world, a would-have-been groomsman at my imaginary wedding, and just a beautiful, intelligent light in every room he walks into. He and I worked together for a number of years at Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, and he, along with his wife, Katie Hartke, and I, started a theater company together in New York City called Esperance Theater Company that does classical and contemporary work. Ryan is also a fabulous MTCA monologue coach, along with that same said Katie Hartke. This is another one of our artist exploration episodes where we'll look at the college process and what carried forward into the career of some successful artists today. I'm really excited today because we're beginning a branching out of our paths, where we're going to start discussing some paths that are not just BFA-MT arrows pointed straight at the Broadway bullseye. As we know and will continue to explore, there are a lot of different ways to reach that goal of success and a lot of versions of what success looks like for different artists. So in the coming episodes, I think you'll start to see some more diverse paths, as well as some fun and different career choices from our guest artists. At least that will be our goal. Here specifically, we get into a common different path, which is not so different for non-MT actors, in getting a BA and then getting an MFA in grad school. This is much more common for non-musical actors than for musical theater majors, though not unheard of, I should say, for MTs either, as you'll see in an upcoming episode. Today, with Ryan, we get into finding and following your bliss and the value of a good community. We talk about getting a BA, a liberal arts major, and a double major in theater. We talk about failure and resilience. We talk about how access has made the world smaller and how it's made maybe our students a little bit more on point, as Ryan says. And we talk about catching the damn football. Upcoming next, we have Quinn Gordon and the first of our non-musical acting schools in the wonderful North Carolina School of the Arts. This is the first, but not the last, acting majors, I promise. But let's get to the interview with Ryan. Okay, well, I am super jazzed to bring on the great Ryan Quinn on the podcast today. Ryan is an actor and a director, as well as a fantastic teacher for MTCA. Ryan has a BA in theater from the University of Wisconsin-Madison and an MFA in acting from the Yale School of Drama. He's worked off-Broadway at places like Second Stage, Tofana, Bedlam. He's worked regionally at the Old Globe and ART, Portland Center Stage, among many others, and many years at the Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival, where he is currently calling in from. So currently working artist at the moment. He's been on TV in things like Blind Spot, Madam Secretary, Friends from College. He has many directing credits, including right now he's directing at HVSF. He's directed at Milwaukee Rep. He's directed at NYU. He's also the artistic director and co-founder of Esperance Theater Company, along with the wonderful Katie Hartke and myself. Last year, he taught first-year acting students at Carnegie Mellon, and he's also an all-star MTCA monologue coach. Rye, welcome to the pod, my man. How you feeling?
What's up? I'm feeling great. This is amazing. I gotta bring you around to be my hype man before I go everywhere. I feel inflated right now.
I have to warn you, Rye, throughout this pod, we are going to both hype you up a lot and at times embarrass you. So it's going to be a roller coaster ride for you.
I need an even dose of both, so I'll take it. I'll take it all.
You're our first artist with that beautiful MFA, first artist that we've had on the pod, non-college faculty style, even though you also now are college faculty. But I'm going to take us through this journey just a little bit differently than how we've done it previously with guest artists, in that I'm going to ask you some of these questions about your undergrad and then some questions about your grad. So hopefully we'll kind of nimbly dance between the two. You can let me know if you're ever like, wait, I don't understand which school I'm answering this question for. Please do let me know, but I'll try to be clear as we're going. But I'd love to start. Let's take you all the way back and imagine that 16, 17-year-old Ryan Quinn.
Yeah.
And just imagine, like, if you had been precocious enough at the time to kind of have a mission statement for what you were looking for in a school, what do you think it would have been way back then?
I think back then, I don't know if I'd even formed the idea of like what a mission statement was about. Like that kind of came in the development of later on, like knowing what my dream actually was, I think if I had to parse it out, honestly, one of the baseline levels was just fun, right?
Hmm.
Like just finding and following my bliss, right? And figuring out what that was. Like even when I went to undergrad, I didn't know. I had an idea of what I wanted my major to be. I had an idea of where I was going, but like 2 years in, I was like really just taking the classes that I loved. And I think then the other thing that has gotten more defined as I've got older, it was being in the right community. I think the people that like really challenged me, but also like that I just loved and enjoyed being around. Like whether it was playing sports or whether it was being in a show or whether it was just like hanging out at schools, like being in that community that just made me like myself, like feel like myself, you know.
And did you know then that you would want to be a theater major, or did you know theater was going to be a part of college for you?
No, no, I was going to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a politician. Like I say to my students now, had I been like the Obama generation, and that would have been happening while I was in high school, I for sure right
Hmm.
now I would be, you know, some community organizer somewhere. I feel like
Huh.
that's where my trajectory was. I loved acting, but I'm from Wisconsin, and we have great regional theater there. But I saw a lot, but it was all community theater, and I didn't really understand that you could be an actor and not a movie star. Like I
Hmm.
didn't understand that it was like a career in that way. And so no, I didn't have ambitions about being a theater major when I first went to undergrad.
Okay, now we're going to begin jumping back and forth. So now skip ahead to now you're applying to grad schools. How might that have shifted in terms of your mission statement, in terms of what you were looking for as you applied to grad schools?
So I think my mission statement when I went to grad school is that I had developed an acting process that I think was allowing me to feel more like myself. But in undergrad, I felt like really free. I felt fearless. I felt fearless in undergrad
Hmm.
in terms of theater, and I wasn't feeling that when I got out and in the jobs that I was doing. So again, going back to I think that first idea before, I think it was a community that would allow me to fail and not crush me, but that would also like really challenge me and give me the tools for a lifetime of being an actor. Or a lifetime of being an artist, and to be surrounded by people that would also provide me all those challenges.
Do you remember your audition for Yale?
Oh, for sure.
Do you have any good like audition callback stories?
Well, here's the thing. I don't even know if you know this story. I first met Katie in my audition for Yale. Oh, you do know this story. Yeah, so I remember it very well. That's my wife, also MTCA coach and co-founder of Esperance Theater Company.
We tried to do Katie in a little parenthetical. We couldn't do it. It was like had to be like a triple parenthetical. Also MDC, also the mother of Zoe. Also that you had to throw a lot of things in
I mean, there's no. I mean, we need a much longer bio to get all her
there.
wonderfulness in here. Yeah, so I remember very clearly that audition. I remember people that I met. I remember conversations in the room that were happening. My dear friend Brian Terrell Clark was also in that audition day with me, and he ended up being in my class. Like clear as I remember taking the train up to on the Metro North up to New Haven to do it. I was in the midst of rehearsing Midsummer Night's Dream that Katie was also in. So when we first met that first day of rehearsal, we were like, wait, were you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was you. And that started all, yeah, clear as a bell.
Any good audition stories? Anything that in the auditions themselves? Any like challenging things they asked you to do, and or do you remember what you did in your audition?
Yeah, so I for sure remember what I did. I did "When 'Tis Done" from Macbeth,
Mm.
Act 1, Scene 7, and then I did a monologue from Cornelius from what's the Thornton Wilder Matchmaker.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so just a sweet little piece there. I Two things that were really big takeaways for me from that audition. One is still a question that I often ask my MTCA students when I first meet them. If Walton Wilson, the voice teacher, asked me if I could do a season of Ryan Quinn, what shows would you pick and what would you want to play? And I loved getting that question
Mm.
because it kind of baffled me at the very beginning of it, but like it led to my like just the best conversation that I had with him, and he got to know like what I was into and what I liked, and so I still use that. The other one was at that time the callback happened that day, so like you auditioned, you had to wait to the end of the section, and then you got your call back, and then you had to wait along for to the end of the day, and then those people went to like this 3-hour callback. And I remember in the callback, we were working the Mackers piece, and Evan Unulis, who's the head of the program at the time, gave me this note, and I didn't quite know what it meant. I just knew that she wanted me to release more and be a little bit more free.
Mm.
And so I did it without worry, that exact thing that I was like hoping to do, just like not care. And at that time in the middle of the audition, I wasn't holding on tight to trying to get in. For some reason, I had this idea of like, I get to have a masterclass with Evan Unulis
Mhm.
and Walton Wilson. Like I get to do it. And I actually felt it and meant it. It wasn't hyperbole. And I did it. And I can remember just seeing her face and being like, okay, I got you. And it was just wonderful because I wasn't trying to do something. I wasn't trying to give her what she wanted. It was more of like the feeling of how she wanted me to be in the room, even without specifically understanding like what she wanted in the text.
Oh, I love that. Well, we're definitely going to dive a little bit more into some of those deeper conversations as we go. But I do think that idea of if you can put yourself in that place of learning as opposed to showing off, it is
Yeah.
it's so nice. Both a way for you to kind of have status in the audition room because you're going, I'm getting something out of this, but also it's what teachers, of course, are looking for because they love to teach.
Yeah. Hard to do. I mean, it's like, it's that battle of putting yourself in that place. Like sometimes you have the idea of wanting to do it, but it's the nerves that get in the way. So it's like
Mhm.
actually the years of prepping the mentality to get there. And that time it just kind of felt like kismet.
It's so true. Okay, so mission statements aside, you ended up at Wisconsin-Madison. In a few words, just tell me what was that experience like for you? What was the 4 years there?
For me, it was beautiful because I got to take classes in everything, right? So I got a real liberal arts education. I fell in love. I was an English major first, and then I got to take philosophy and psychology. And in the midst of it, I did a show at one of the community theaters there, where there were a lot of theater majors there, and I got to know them, and they had. Getting to know them, I was like, I think I can do this in the program. Let me audition for it. And I did, and I
Mhm.
got in. And so then I became a double major in theater. And the great thing that happened for me when I was there is that uh, because I came late, I got to take all those classes right in a row instead
Mm.
of like a normal BA would have to spread them out just a little bit more. I got them all in a row. And they also have a grad program there that it's once every 3 years, but we got to take classes with some of the grad students, and seeing their dedication
Mm.
and seeing their kind of focus in the work, like really, really changed for me and made me know that this is what I really wanted to do.
And did you know right when you graduated, did you know you definitely wanted an MFA? Or do you think I'm graduating, I'm going to go be an actor, I'm done with school?
No, no, I didn't. I didn't know until a few years later. I started. There were kind of two things that happened, but I won't tell both those stories. But the one that happened, I auditioned for a show after I was out, and I couldn't do the show, and I had to call the director to tell him. And we didn't know each other from anything besides the audition. And he spent like 45 minutes on the phone with me,
Mm.
saying that these are the steps that I think that you should take, and these are the programs that you should start to look at. And I'd been thinking it already, but that was really the impetus that
Mm.
like spurred me to be like, yeah, next year I'm going to do this. These are the skills that I'm going to start to research, and I'm going to start to talking to people about it. But it was somebody else, that kind
Mhm.
of like a teacher that kind of gave me that little boost.
I love that. Okay, now let's jump forward a little bit. So you're into Yale, you're
Uh
at
huh.
Yale. Give me like in like three-ish words, what was the experience of being a Yale School of Drama student?
Uh, Exhausting, beautiful,
Mm.
and everlasting journey.
Exhausting, beautiful, and everlasting journey.
Hmm.
Beautiful. I love that. That's a great motto for Yale. It's kind of just a motto for life too. No.
Yeah, I mean, everlasting journey in that I feel like you get a roadmap there that you don't actually know what the destination is, but then as you go further in life, you look back and you're like, oh, I understand exactly what that is now.
Mhm.
Like 10 years later, I keep coming back to those those moments in class where things weren't connecting. And they always said it's going to take 10 years to make an actor out of you, right? And those things just start to click as I get older.
Okay. Are you ready for the first of 2.5 games that you and I are going to play on this podcast today?
I hope so.
This is
Yes,
probably the only
I'm
game.
ready. I'm ready. There was a twinkle in your eye that made me think maybe I'm not ready for
This is
this,
not the
but I
hard game
think I'm
yet.
ready.
This is probably the only game
Yeah.
where you can actually like potentially win or lose. It's a numerical game,
Oh,
but the goal is to get as many answers as you possibly can in responding to the grad school flashback round.
got it.
All right, ready, Charlie?
6 seconds on the clock.
Go.
Favorite show you did in school?
Oh my God. I'm failing. I'm failing. Well, the one that I watched is Brother Size.
Okay. Hardest class for you?
Clown.
Did you kiss anyone in your class?
Yes.
Were you a messy roommate or a clean roommate?
Clean.
Something on the dorm room wall that you remember?
I didn't live in a dorm. I lived in housing, but a calendar, dry erase calendar.
Worst fashion choice you made in grad school?
Pants that were like big bell bottoms that Wesley Fada told me to take off and throw in the garbage.
Most consecutive hours awake?
Probably 30.
Ever possess a fake ID? No, wait, I take that question back. Ever stolen from a campus shop / party?
No.
Do you ever cheat on a test?
No.
Farthest character from your age range that you played?
Harmon Wilkes.
School alumni you wanted to be when you grew up? We realized after the first question you were not going to win this game. So that was just, we were playing a scrimmage at that point.
That first one hit me up. That was a hard one.
Yeah, the other games get worse and more embarrassing. So don't you even worry.
I don't even remember what I said.
You said a lot of great things. And at least one of those is my fault. I asked you a fake ID, but you would have been after over 22. So I have to adjust the game more. I have a sample questions I was pulling from randomly, and that was not good. Not good. And you never lived in a dorm room, huh? First year of grad school, you guys just lived in apartments?
Yeah, we lived in apartments. Yeah. I mean, in undergrad for sure.
And what was the hesitation of favorite show? Could you not think of a show, or were they all of your favorite?
I couldn't think of names. Like I was picturing people that were in them, and then but my two favorite moments were not shows that I did. It was seeing Dance the Holy Ghost and seeing Brother Size. Like those were transformative moments of watching. And to take it back to our MTCA, as we always talk about, of being in the mocks, the transformative moments often come from watching. Like you've built all the things that are there, but like you're not required to do the work for it. But they change me. I keep coming back to watching those actors and thinking about that direction in those two playwrights. And they were two beautiful moments for me at school.
We don't need to turn your failure in this game into a learning experience. You can just live in your failure and just smell it on yourself, and just we don't have to like turn it into a beautiful lesson or anything like that.
Great.
It'll be a sensible plug for a mock, though.
Sensible plug. Slightly slower look back at the school days.
Yeah.
If you now could go back to Yale School of Drama as you've done at my alma mater and taught at Carnegie Mellon. If you go back and teach at Yale School of Drama, what class do you feel like you should teach that maybe was missing while you were there?
Oh, that was missing. So I don't know if this would be the class that I would go teach, but I think the class that I think should be a bigger part of curriculum is improv. Like I think we get games and we get clown, and I think those are extremely important. We even got circus, but I think like more improv classes I think would be really helpful.
And are you thinking like specifically comedic improv, or just the idea of being able to improv like you might do on camera, just that idea of being able to go back and forth?
I think maybe like, Second City stuff, but I think more of who are those two guys that do the really long form improv? Like
TJ and Dave, you thinking?
Yeah. Stuff like that where you're really responsible for having that other person be so necessary in creating the world that you're living in. I think that habit and that muscle it really translates to just about everything.
What's maybe the biggest thing you take away from those years? Like, what are you so grateful that you had in school and now have under your belt as a professional actor?
I think the two things were really honest, Steve, failure and resiliency. Because those classes were hard and some of those days were hard. And, one of our community agreements that started for this show for The Tempest that was originated by the first cast, Miss Martha, on our board as we come in is it's not hard because you're not good. It's hard because it's hard. Okay. And I think that took me a while to get. That when it was hard and it wasn't working, I quickly started to feel that, you're not good enough, right? And but it was nice to be in that, to kind of be to find the resilience of coming out of it. And then I think the other thing, to be honest, is just a blueprint, right? Evan said one time, trust what got you into school and trust what like got you into these rooms. Like you have moments of really great success. Like you're able to do it. What we're going to do is show you how to do that more often. Right. And I think that's right. So when things aren't working for you, you have a process to go back to figure out how you can get to those moments where it can start working for you again. So that the frustration of not being able to figure out, like, you have a way to work through it.
Those great answers. What is there anything that you feel like you wish you would have done differently in school? So if you could kind of go back and coach, Ryan as he's entering grad school, is there anything you'd be like, do this more, do this less?
Yeah, I think that two things that I would tell myself. The first one goes to that idea of resiliency. It took me a minute to get there, and I probably didn't get it to actually really feel it until some time in the middle of my third year. So that was a it was a long time to kind of be in and out of that. And then I think the other thing, actually, I have three things. So the other thing is, I was at Yale, but I spent 99.9% of my time in the drama department. Like I didn't really utilize the resources of the university, and people had told me to do it and I just didn't. Like I was like, where is the time? But there's always time to be made to kind of to do that. And I think that would have been really interesting for me. The one thing that I'll add on to it, I started dating again, Katie Harkey callback, a month or so ish before I started school, and we made it all the way through. So I would tell myself, you've got the right one. Take your time with that and develop that relationship as well, because there was something really nice and beautiful that we felt like we earned it when we got out of school. But in the midst of it, when school can feel overwhelming and it's the only thing, it wasn't. Like life and a relationship that we were building for the future was as important, not only for myself as a human, but for my work. Right. And that happened alongside of the painstaking stuff that was happening in school too.
Oh, beautifully said. Okay, we're going to take a really quick break. And when we come back, Ryan Quinn will attempt game number 2. And this will be the tough one. We'll see. We'll be back in a second. Okay, we're back. Now, this is a game that is a little bit less about winning or losing, but a little bit more about me either embarrassing or hyping you up in turn. We'll see how this goes. All questions will be related to shows we have done together. Shows you and I have done together. And I'm just going to say, I do know that Ryan has like a phobia about names and remembering people's names, even people that he knows very well.
Oh, please don't let this be about names.
Just a tiny little bit.
It can be about character names, not people.
It's mostly about characters.
Please don't. I get nervous. I'm going to forget. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Ryan, guys, for those of you who are not watching the video, Ryan has visibly started sweating. There's like sweat pouring down his face. He's comedically wiping his brow with an old school handkerchief. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes.
In one of the first shows you and Charlie did together,
yes.
Romeo and Juliet at Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival.
Yes.
Charlie played 2
yes.
pivotal characters.
Yes.
Can you name both of those characters?
Yes. Tybalt and the Hamlet he was named Hamlet, but he was also like the I forget what his like real name in the show was.
You remember the fake name, not the Hamlet the Night Watchman. That's
Hamlet
exactly
the Night
right.
Watchman. I did you see me bringing in a lantern? For those of you that can't, I gestured a lantern. Hamlet the lantern character.
I did not think you were going to remember that.
Oh,
I thought we needed to phone a friend, someone on that. No. All right, great. So you're 1 for 1. You're doing fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay. This is an impossible question to answer. More of a chance to hype you up. You and Charlie played brothers in King Lear at Hudson Valley Shakespeare Festival. You were, of course, brilliant in the role. Of all of Edmund's fantastic and famous lines, can you guess what was my personal favorite Ryan Quinn line reading / moment? Hint, it is not a famous line.
I think it's the one that I met. Is it the one that I messed up every night? That was like, go, come, go, when I had to get you out and I never got them in the right order. That would be my favorite.
No, though I did consider trying to ask you if you remembered those lines.
I don't. I never remembered them.
You never got
Not
those right.
once in a performance.
No, my favorite moment from you, and this is really just because I still think about it to this day, was you. I'd be like way off stage because in Hudson Valley there's like a deep backstage sort of, which is the river, and you saying when you're like challenging everybody at the end for the fight, you say on him, on you, who not, and you would like shriek who not like a basketball player who just dunked on an entire stadium, and it was so good. It was like a Kobe like. He can't guard me. He can't do it. Like it was such a moment. Like I still have chills every time I hear it. I'm like, I want to steal that moment. Who not? Let's go.
You know what's so crazy? I don't even remember that line, and I love that I don't. But I do very much feel like that's how I felt at the end. I did feel like Giannis looking at the camera after I just dunked on Chris Paul.
That's what it was like. That was it. The flex. Okay, jumping forward a little bit to some Esperance moments.
Yes,
we had so much fun doing our first show of 12th Night, especially the music.
Yes.
The amazing Chopper Jacobs and MTCA's own Carl Howell did a bunch of beautiful arrangements.
Yes.
For 1 million podcast points.
Oh my gosh.
Do you remember your harmony to the chorus of the opening song? For those who can't see Brian's face right now, he's begun rolling his eyes very much. I'm going to sing you the melody for reference. May we all fall down.
Oh, I remember the nursery rhyme that they had to tell me so that I'd remember it.
All fall down.
I can't do it.
Oh,
Three
come on,
blind mice.
I knew it.
Any of my MT students, you can kill me for this because you know that I can't. I can barely do a nursery rhyme. I kill bedtime with Zoe, but the rest gives me phobia.
I just have images of you like coming up to my shoulder being like, what is it? Hold on. I got it. Okay. What is it? Okay. Last embarrassing question ever.
Yeah.
For our most recent Esperance production, this is a gettable question. Right Witch Farm by the amazing Jeremy J. Camps.
Yes.
My character ran for public office.
Mm-hmm.
What did the campaign sign we used on stage say?
Fight for you? No, fight.
Oh, so close. I believe it was Foyt for you.
Oh, Foyt.
We're looking Foyt. The character name was Jimmy Foyt.
Yes.
Foyt for you.
Foyt for you.
Very close. Partial credit. Yeah. All right. Now, your favorite question of the podcast.
Okay.
Your Milwaukee Bucks are currently winning the NBA Finals 3-2. As we record this on Tuesday, July 20th. Game 6 is tonight. By the time this podcast airs, it will be all over, baby. Here's a chance for 2 million podcast points and to look like a genius if you get it right.
Yeah.
Nostradamus Quinn. Bucks in 6.
Yep.
Bucks in 7, or a heartbreaking Suns in 7.
Bucks in 6.
No hesitation.
They're coming home.
It's over tonight. You're calling your shot right now. It's over. Yeah. I'm going to say Bucks in 7, but let's see.
Bucks in 7 is a much. That's the outlier of all of them, right?
I'm going to look like a genius. I think.
Yeah,
I think that's what's going to happen.
Okay.
Let's talk a little bit about your professional life. So I'm going to do this in kind of 2 different chunks here. Maybe we can talk a bit about that moment when you graduated at 22, especially from some of our students who maybe graduate with BAs. Maybe there's not a showcase moment and kind of what that's like moving to New York City and figuring it out. And then we can talk maybe a little bit about the difference after your MFA experience.
Yeah. When I left Madison, by that point, I knew that I wanted to be an actor. I went to school then with a lot of wonderful actors that I love. And one of them was Heidi Armbruster. And we, at that time, we did a few grad school auditions. I didn't know anything about the process then. And I didn't get into any of the schools that were my targets, but there was this program in New York called GATE that doesn't exist anymore. But that brought me to New York City. I mean, I kind of knew that I was going there anyway, and my sister had just gotten into Columbia, so it was like a perfect way to come into New York. So I came into New York already having a home base for like a one-year conservatory, and it was beautiful for me because I was getting a BA that I could just do theater and I was ready. By that time, I was like ready for it, and I still go back to a lot of the lessons that I got there. Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit, what was that early moment in New York City? Maybe even as you're graduating from that and starting to work, how did that work for you? as a 23-year-old? Are you doing survival jobs? How are you sort of
Yeah.
figuring out and navigating that time?
Yeah, all of it. It was the hardest time, I think, in my life, from moving from somewhere where you constantly had things that are set up, that your survival actually became something that I was thinking about. So like survival jobs were actually survival. Like, how am I going to pay the rent, and how am I going to what meals and what things are going to happen at uh, and how much money I'm going to have for these things. So that first, particularly probably the first 2 years in navigating that, and what jobs I could get, and how much time I had, all that stuff was really hard. And then it wasn't as hard. You start
Hmm.
figuring out and navigating all that stuff. I wouldn't trade that. Those I was just talking about that with a younger actor in the cast of the Tempest cast. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was really hard. I lived with Jeremy Camps. Did you know
I
that?
do, yeah.
Oh, you did know that.
But the podcast doesn't, so you could maybe tell
Yeah,
that
so
story.
Jeremy Camps, who wrote Brightwish Farms for Esperance, and who's a brilliant, brilliant playwright, he and I kind of moved to the city at the same time. And that we lived in an apartment, I won't say where, but in New York City, in a rough neighborhood. And we lived in a fifth floor walk up, and the fourth floor was abandoned. And because it was abandoned, there were rats that lived there. And sometimes in the morning, when we'd come down from the first apartment, there were
Mm-mm,
like
mm-mm.
rats that we'd like walk by to get out. I mean, awful. I didn't tell my parents that until probably 5 years after it all happened. But that was like I I'm also going to tell this story. Also, when we moved there, we had no furniture, like none. Like, we were just like these, just these kids. We had no furniture, and there was some stuff coming, but I had like no bed for a little bit. So for 2 weeks, I slept on my clothes in New York
Oh
City
my
while I was going
God.
to class and getting my survival job all set up. Again, didn't tell my parents that until probably 5 years later. And like, we didn't have like lamps, and so like I was trying to be like, I'm the starving artist, so like I'd have like this little like flashlight and like reading Langston Hughes, because I'm like, this is like
Hmm.
I'm living it. Like, this is my idea of what New York City was like reading Langston Hughes, and I was so like, I'm gonna do that and sleep on my clothes, and figure it all out later. Yeah.
So cool. And now, how might that be a little bit different from now you've graduated, you have an MFA from Yale, and now you're coming back to the city, potentially seeking work in different ways. How did that experience feel different from you those years later?
Like, just reversal, right? So one, I was coming out of school, moving in with my then girlfriend, about to be fiance. I knew ahead of time I need to get survival job set up, so I was already doing that at the end of.
Mm.
I was actually going right into a show. We did Midsummer right after that. But as that was happening, I was getting the survival job set up. We had a showcase, so like I had already met tons of casting directors, and so like auditions were already happening even while I was in a show.
Hmm.
And then the show closes, and then you don't have what the next thing is. But like, I was set up with a survival job. I was set up with housing. I was set up with a unit of community that I'd already developed from my time in New York. I had the Yale community. Like, it was just, the hard thing was just like the hard thing is now, when you're not in a show, you want to be working on
Hmm.
a show. So those things are hard, but the rest of it was, I had learned how to navigate that aspect of my life.
And I imagine Katie did not let you sleep on clothes.
No, we had a great. We actually live in the same building that we live in now. I live in
So
Chris
amazing.
Edwards, who directed us in Romeo and Juliet. We're subletting from him.
So amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything just educationally? I know you're doing so much teaching and so much working right now. Is there anything educationally that you're doing to kind of keep your personal artistic growth moving forward? Or are you taking classes or anything that you're kind of working on to keep your own self fueled?
Yeah, I've a little bit. I mean, what was great about working at Carnegie last year is now part of their curriculum is taking classes in anti-racist theater models, and so like I was able to take a bunch of those classes, and
Mm.
I work with Bedlam a lot, and so through them too, we've been taking a lot of classes. So I've been trying to develop that aspect, and what's beautiful about it is just the language to kind of to describe experience that I think hadn't been in our zeitgeist, or our actual like vocabulary, and how we talk about shows has changed, and that's been eye opening for me. And man, this is cheesy, but feel like the wonderful thing about being a teacher is that you're always learning, like you're constantly in that mindset of trying to pick up and
Mm-hmm.
learn, and I do feel like I'm able to get myself into that state all the time. And right now, I'm directing The Tempest, but in that show are Kurt Rhodes and Nance Williamson, who are my idols. And so, like, even though I'm directing them, I'm learning from them constantly about what the show is, about what it means to be an actor, what it means to be an artist, constantly.
Well, let's get into that a little bit. We'll do our second ever MTCA Coach Corner. We'll talk a little bit about some of your experiences, what you've learned from coaching specifically. What's maybe one thing that surprised you about this process in working for over 8 years with your students?
How on point they are from jump. Like, I try to think of myself as being 16 and 17 or 15 sometimes. And I am constantly awed by the conversations that we get to have from the very beginning. And I think part of it is that the world has become smaller because I didn't have an email address when I first started college, right? So, like, things have changed. There's this thing called the internets. I think you guys have heard of them. That I think that access to information has like, I couldn't watch Broadway shows, right? Like, I didn't
Mhm,
have access to who those actors are unless I was really, really seeking it out, and that just wasn't where I was at when I was that age.
mhm,
So I think it's that, but also just a combination of I don't know. I feel like something has changed with the focus of young people that are coming up, and uh, them understanding the sharpness of moments, like
mm.
conversations about not just what it means to be an artist, but about community and empathy and, like, all of these big things that I wasn't talking about until my late 20s. I get to have
Mm.
conversations with them about, and they're 16. It's pretty incredible.
Well, that leads me so beautifully to our next question, which is just what's something that you maybe have learned from your students, and or what is something that maybe you think they know better than our generation knows? What's something where you go, actually, you are more advanced than we are in this.
Yeah, so I think what they know more than I had any kind of idea of is a sense of where they want to be when they're in their 40s, right? I feel like they have a stronger picture of that, which is makes it really exciting, to talk to them when I first meet them. And I don't mean just like I'm going to be in a Broadway show, or I'm going to be, a series regular on this TV show. That's part of it, but just the idea of how they want to live in the world by starting to put these pieces together right from the very beginning of how it is that they want to work. That
Mm.
came to me much later, and I feel like they a lot of them know it at 16.
What's something you would go back and maybe coach your younger self, so your younger coach self, maybe 6 years ago, to do more of? Is there something that you've kind of learned from yourself as a coach to improve on?
I would be more involved. I would take myself to New York City. I would take myself to LA. I would travel more. I would go to more museums. I would read. Like, I would encourage myself to engage in artistic endeavors even more. I loved doing it, but I wasn't forward footed in it. I just did it
Hmm.
because it was there. And I think even saw part of it as like, yeah, culture is good, instead of like understanding of how it fills the well for everything.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Couple fun questions. This is our half game, maybe. Um, what was your favorite note to give me as a director? When you were directing me, what is your favorite note that you gave me?
Throw me the cup.
Okay. And was there ever a note that you felt like you couldn't give me because of our personal relationship, but you were like, I wish I could tell him this. I would tell him this, but it's too difficult.
Um, no, because I feel like we have a relationship where there isn't that note that I couldn't give you. That you would know that I'm not, there was nothing about your character, or your, like, that I have full belief in you as a person and an artist, that like I wouldn't I wouldn't be coming under that. So no, I don't feel like that. I feel like I could be very candid in everything that we were talking about.
That was mostly just a question to get you to hype me up in that way, which is I couldn't agree more. But also something I'll throw back at you, which I think is, as you're finding community, I think is such a cool thing that you and I have been able to find in that ability to switch hats in so many different roles,
Yeah.
including potentially varying statuses. If someone's, okay, now Ryan is my artistic director. Okay, now Ryan is my director in the show. Okay, now Ryan is a coach working under me. Like those little moments to be able to go back and forth, it's a really helpful thing, I think, for a healthy relationship to be able to be in different relationship to the same person. And yeah, so I feel the
Yeah,
same
I
way
think
about
it's
you.
that idea about like satellite leadership, right? It's like figuring out a way to constantly give space and give room,
Right.
right? Like that's
This
what
person
leadership
is
is,
right. This person is not the role of higher status than me
right?
always in life. They just in this moment are holding the mic, and then it's got to get past here. And then yeah, I think
That's
that is
right,
such a healthier way for us to live in the world.
Can
for
we go
sure.
back to throwing the cup? Can we explain to our listeners what that is? It seems like a little inside joke between you and Charlie, but partly a little
Well,
technical, I think.
yeah. So we played Toby and Andrew, and I'm directing the show, but I'm also in it as Andrew. And so I told him to throw the cup to me so that I could intentionally miss it. So I was telling him a direction to set me up for a joke. Um, and um, and I don't think he knew that I was going to miss it when I first did it. And I saw him look at me like, "Oh, you sneaky sneak." So that was my favorite one because like it was like both like Charlie and Ryan like acting in the scene, but also Andrew and Toby acting. It was on all levels, and it was like my favorite thing about being in a company together when those things happen.
I feel like it makes me want you to tell the story of Chris Edwards too about the field goal too, because that immediately also makes me think of like Three Musketeers when I would get a knife thrown to me every night, and it's like, whatever you do, you can't drop this knife. Was the direction I was given. I was like, okay, I'll try, but it was like thrown from like 30 feet away, and I was like, I have to catch this every night. I have to
Yeah.
do it. And that same director, please, if you want to tell that story.
So I was in it with Chris. I was playing. We were doing Two Gents here at Hudson Valley with Kurt Rhodes, who I also mentioned that I get to direct right now. He was directing me, and Chris and I were Valentine and Proteus. But there's this huge, big field at Hudson Valley that often, like, we come back over at the top. It's an outdoor theater in a huge tent. It's just a glorious place to do shows. But at the top of it, we played high school football players, and at the top we'd run over and we'd have an actual football that would be thrown and set, and I was the field goal kicker, and I would go through and I would kick the field goal over the like over the tent. And one day, like, I kicked it like directly into the tent on like on a dress, and Kurt like runs out to me, the coach, and he was just like, it's like a free throw. It's like a free throw. You just have to relax. So I was given that, like, I could tell that he was just like, don't ever kick this into the like tent. You'll kill somebody. Then later on in previews and performances, that the way that scene would end is I would run out into the field, and Chris would like throw me like a Hail Mary pass. And I'd once I started to start feeling myself, I'd let it go a little bit, and then I'd run and try to like catch it and dive. And every once in a while I'd miss it because that's what happens. Like it's a game. You miss the ball. And I end up in a live performance as like I'm this young actor, like trying to like figure out how to play this lead role. I come around the side, waiting for me when I come back in there is the director who was also in the show. He's waiting for me, and he says to me, "You have to catch the football. The show, the show just gets off to a better start if you catch the football." And that was it. Is like, catch the ball. Like, the note was catch the ball. The show is depending on you catching the ball. And I was like, okay, coach. Yeah, I'm in.
Aw.
One or two questions in contemplation,
Yeah.
especially now having some view into the collegiate world, from having taught at colleges and of course having taught with MTCA, and then also as a professional. How do you feel like the industry is changing in this crazy year of 2021? So where do you think we are going from here? What's it look like 5, 10 years from now, if we continue making these shifts?
Yeah, we're at a radical moment of change, and I think it's really beautiful. And I think what has to happen is the work is starting to be more to put it, I think in its simplest terms, human focused, right? Instead of like work focused. And I think if it is human focused, the the product will actually be better. And so just reevaluating the systems of how we put on a play are changing, right? Like 10 out of 12 pretty soon, I think, are going to be a thing of the past. The 6-day rehearsal, like, I think, is slowly start to go, so that you can, as you're going to feel in a moment, like have a family and have those aspects of your life that you can bring in. And that's like on a broader scale, but we're just also reevaluating, as we were talking about like hierarchy before, like just this white male centric idea of like what a workday looks like and who should be filling all roles across the board. And as we were saying, is creating space, is that there just has to be more space, because true excellence is when more people are in the room and more people are able to collaborate, and there's more context that's brought into each and every experience, and that context is including your life outside of whatever show it is that you're working on. And I believe I feel it right now in the rehearsal process that we're in right now. And I felt that in other theaters as they get ready to reopen. I think it's going to happen. And I think the other thing with that is, as we're starting to reopen, we just got the mandate in the beginning of July, that for this show, and I think it's probably happened other places as well, but for us, it's a big deal. Audience members can take their masks off. The first shows that they did for Miss Martha, they couldn't, right? And so the actors were just talking about, there's no exchange. We can't feel like what the show, even if you hear a laugh, you don't know where it's coming from. So in that true beauty of communion that happens in theater, it's not happening. And I think we've really missed that chance to commune with each other, that thing of like why theater is the second oldest profession, right? Of like why it is that we need to be around and live in that world. And I think once we get it back and we start feeling that with this kind of idea for human focused work, I think a change is going to have to come.
I love that. If you were now talking to either a 17-year-old looking at BFA programs, or maybe a 20-something-year-old looking at MFA programs, is there any advice that you want to throw them as they're kind of beginning that journey?
I think it comes back to those two kind of core values of empathy and community, right? Of really figuring out the job of the actor or the job of the artist is to be an exceptional listener, right? It's theater's the great empathetic teacher. And if you're able to dedicate yourself to that, right, all these other things will start to open. But the process feels like it's going to take that away from you. The process wants results. Your art is your person. And that's really hard when you get no's. But if you lean into that and like keep finding a way to open your heart to keep listening and learning, the world is going to come to you.
It was such a pleasure having you on the pod today, Rye. Is there anything you want to plug? I know you have some things coming up show-wise. And then also, if you want to give us, I know you're not like a huge online person, but any apps or places to find you on the internet, we can do that too.
Yeah, come see The Tempest at Hudson Valley. I think it's going to be lovely and wonderful. I have no of the socials to plug. I was going to be like, yeah, check me, but I honestly, I don't even know what my Instagram handle is.
Oh my God. It's at Ryan Allen Quinn. We even looked it up
you.
here.
There you go.
On Instagram and Twitter.
You'll see some pictures of my daughter. But yeah, no, the Tempest is coming up, and the Mountaintop at Arc Stages in Pleasantville. I think that's also going to be pretty dope for people who are on the East Coast.
Amazing. And these are both directing jobs for you. So cool. Well, a huge thank you to you, Ryan. It's so nice to have you
the
on.
best.
I love you, man.
I love you too.
More soon. Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing Ryan Quinn as much as I enjoyed seeing his beautiful face. I just want to take a second and go deeper into something we talked about today, which I'm actually surprised we haven't brought up before on the pod, which is that idea of the importance of failure and finding a place that will let you feel comfortable failing. It's a TPAP motto. They always talk about failing forward, which I really like as a kind of a phrase. But I'm going to torture a different metaphor for a second here. The way that, I always make athletics versus artists metaphors of, athletes as artists and artists as athletes. I think in the same way that an athlete's goal in working out is to work to the point of failure, in a lot of ways, that should be a goal for artists too. So it's very valuable, I think, to find that safe and brave space for yourself to be able to experiment and play with high stakes, and maybe in those high stakes moments, make mistakes that you can learn from. And maybe to tease this analogy even a little bit more, the goal of what you're seeking artistically isn't failure. The goal in the work is in the work itself. So the same way as an athlete, your goal might be to lift that weight a little heavier or to run a little bit faster, right? You're reaching actively for that goal, but you are still working to the point of failure, right? That you'll know your workout has reached something if my muscles are actually tired. And in some ways, us artistically tiring out our muscles means taking those risks and potentially actually finding failure. So sometimes there's actually more value in being like gloriously wrong in a rehearsal room than in kind of being safely right. And I think anyone who's kind of been in a rehearsal room, you felt that before. We go, well, that choice was interesting, didn't work, but boy, I learned a lot about myself from trying that and going to that place, as opposed to sticking kind of within your comfort zone. It's harder to grow from that place of a comfort zone. So something we look for in school for sure, finding that right gym for ourselves. But I think also really important to seek out of school as artists as well. I think you'll note from this conversation the many playgrounds Ryan has sought for himself and the curious way he's been able to live his artistic life, not devoid of failure, but constantly in process and constantly seeking artistic growth. So the same way athletes will build those stronger muscles by failure and the resting and the rebuilding, I think that can be some of the goals for us as artists too, if we can find those right gyms. I'm literally heading to the gym right after this, so forgive me if that metaphor is like, I'm really forcing it, but I'm trying to pump some irons after this. That's why. If you enjoyed this episode, maybe at the gym yourself, I love listening to podcasts at the gym, and you want to hear more, please hit that subscribe button. We'd also love it if you were to rate and review us where you found us. We suggest 5 stars if you have sure hands with a football, and ironic 5 stars if you're more of a butterfingers. You can also reach out to us with questions for the pod at mailbag@mappingthecollegeaudition.com. If you're interested in working with MTCA for help with your individual prep for your college audition journey, please check us out at mtcollegeauditions.com. To my young artists out there mapping their journey, you better pay attention in your callback auditions. You might just meet your future partner there. See you next week.